Okay. All right. So today we're going to be focusing on the part on the poster that reads how to create compelling branded content. So if we take compelling branded content and just break it down into branded content, we're going to talk about that just for a second, just to kind of kick things off. Branded content started a long time ago. This is kind of an old example of some branded content. This is a group of individuals that are recording the original soap opera back in 1957. And soap operas actually started as a piece of branded content to sell soap to kind of housewives. So I'm not sure if anyone really knows that, but I didn't know that until a few years ago, actually, that soap operas were kind of one of the original forms of branded content. You fast forward to 2012, the example, has everyone seen this Red Bull project where Felix jumps out of like the edge of space and kind of comes back down to Earth and breaks the speed of sound? So definitely branded content has come a long way, obviously, in that many years.
So just take a second to think about what is the opportunity with branded content and why does it exist? So advertising has got very good at interrupting you in the day-to-day. I don't know if you feel it, but through online and through TV, we basically can interrupt you doing a bunch of things. And everybody's got really good at avoiding it. So it's actually been shown that, for example, online, you block out that right-hand side of the screen because you're so used to there being adverts there. And people just ignoring advertising. So the opportunity with branded content is when you flip that around. So if you picture you being this yellow blob, a little bit hard to do, it doesn't really look like a person. But the idea here is that if you create something that has value in itself, not only do people find time to watch it, they find time that they want to share it, and they find a lot more time. So before we go too far into branded content, let's take a second to step back and explore the brand piece of branded content. So here's a bit of a wordy definition, but I like it. Brand identity is tangible, and it appeals to the senses. It fuels recognition, amplifies differentiation, and makes big ideas and meaning accessible. So a really nice way that I like to think about it is, at its core, branding is all about telling a story. And there are a bunch of ways that we can do that. There's a bunch that goes into a brand, and there are a bunch of different levers you can pull as part of being a brand. So the first one is messaging, and that's what Derek and I spend our days doing, talking about TV campaigns, digital campaigns, anything that the brand puts out and pays for.
This is a really classic ad. Has anyone seen this ad before? Yeah. So how many people here are studying kind of like advertising directly? Okay, so 3. And then how many people here are kind of doing like filmmaking or making content? Okay. And you. And what about you guys in the back?
Making content right now.
Communications. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is a pretty classic ad from DDB. And I believe it was actually done by the original Bill Bernbach, who co-founded the agency. And at its time, it was pretty crazy to take an ad and then have mostly just blank space, right? And then put the car or the product really, really tiny and kind of say, think small about the product. And although that's a positive because you're thinking that the car is small and can park easily and that kind of thing, it was definitely pretty crazy at the time.
So the next one is about visuals. So brands can control the look that goes with them. And David's Tea, you can't actually see much about what it looks like because it's kind of dark there. But David's Tea does a really nice job of this. You can walk into David's Tea and you can know it's a David's Tea without even really reading the sign. The colour, which I rely on Derek's art directing skills, what colour is that?
It's like a seafoam.
Like a seafoam kind of green.
Or like a Tiffany's turquoise, or like, I like to say seafoam because everyone's like, ew, seafoam. It's actually a nice color, so. Yeah.
But if you took that logo away, I think you'd still get the idea that it's David's Tea. Next point here is the people that you have that associate with a brand. So does anyone know who this guy is? Tony Fadell. And
nice.
do you know why he's... The iPod. Yep, so he's been kind of called the father of the iPod. You ruined the reveal there, but that's okay. This little invention that's not done so well. No, of course it's done well, it's huge. He left, as you say, he left Apple and he created Nest. And just in the fact that he went to create this brand, there was this huge equity that went with him. If he did that to music, what's he going to do to the thermostat world? and more recently the fire alarm world.
Does everyone know what Nest is here? Yeah. No? So Nest is kind of it's like a new thermostat for your home, and it connects with Wi-Fi, and you actually have an app, and it learns when to kind of cool and heat your home, and you can remotely control what the temperature is in your home via this app. So it's pretty cool. And it just literally plugs into where your existing thermostat is. So you can take the old thermostat off the wall and just wire this in, and then you're good to go. So.
And wired in means like one wire.
It's like one wire, just like, so. Yeah.
It's cool. The next example here is association. So what your brand associates itself with does a huge amount for telling the story of a brand. So the story I'm going to tell here is this little known guy, David Beckham. I guess, assuming most people know who that is. As a boy, I grew up in England. Can't already tell, and played a lot of football, as I'll call it, because I'm telling the story as if I was in England. And David Beckham was like an idol to me, and I just wanted to play like him. And Adidas made this amazing call picking him up for a sponsorship deal because of the way that he played. So the way that he kicks a free kick, which is what he's doing in this picture actually, he curves it around the wall. And Adidas were the first football boot company to come out with these boots that had these rubber teeth all on the inside of the boot. And it was such a good association for that brand that I was convinced that if I had those boots, I'd be able to kick a football like David Beckham. My mum never paid for those boots, and I'm standing here now, and David Beckham just got his own football team in Miami, so you can see how that worked out.
Right.
And then the final one that we're talking about is behavior. So this is a satellite image of the Horizon oil spill from a few years ago. And brands have an opportunity to actually act. At some level, they're human. They can react to situations in any way that they like. And arguably, BP didn't do the best job of acting after this oil spill. They were a bit shady about some of the information that they put out there. And it had an effect on the way that people perceive the brand. So you saw a lot of logos like this come out all of a sudden. Again, the contrast is horrible enough, but it's the logo of a big splatter of oil. And there's just so many of them online, and they all came. It was this behavior, and all tied to the way that they acted. They took their eyes off of being a good brand and kind of killed themselves.
Yep. So let's talk about Nike for a second. What do you associate with this logo? You might associate like Just Do It, or athletics, or the pursuit of maybe like personal excellence, right? Or you might not associate yourself with that one. But we associate a brand's identity with human characteristics. So when we're talking about brands in the office and we're brainstorming on the different brands that we work on, we will talk about a brand in the way that we might talk about a human. And so with Nike, it's about kind of being aggressive and this pursuit of personal excellence. And brands are worth a lot of money, so it's very important to keep a brand identity carefully constructed over time. And you saw with BP when they made that mistake there, it really cost them. And so this is just a chart of various brands. I think we have Apple, Google, Coca-Cola, and IBM and their value over time. So as you go through year by year and you're building up this brand, it's definitely gaining equity. And that's like in like the billions of dollars, right? So Nike's first logo, well, it's their current logo, but when it was first created in 1971, it was created for $35. And at the time, it was just an idea, right? All companies start as an idea. It's like a napkin sketch, and we want to create shoes and then eventually more products. But so $35 to create the Nike logo back in 1971. And then we fast forward to 2013, and the brand's worth $17 billion. So it's pretty crazy that over that relatively short period of time, it's older than probably a lot of us here in the room, but in that amount of time, it went from an idea on a napkin where the logo or the sketch of the logo was worth $35 all the way through to $17 billion today as a brand. So we also look at why else a brand's identity is important, and that would be market differentiation. So in this case, these are actually two different brands of butter. One is, of margarine. One is I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, and the other one is You Butter Believe It, and I like that one better because it's a dad joke. But if you looked at these on the shelf and you weren't really paying attention, you probably would pick one or the other because they look so similar. And so it's really important as a brand to really differentiate yourself against the competition, because you'll get something like a packaging thing happening in the store where someone will be confused, but also in kind of a greater sense, it helps to start to frame what people are thinking about your brand. So in this example, Microsoft and Apple, similar category, but very different brands, right? You've already kind of have expectations about what Apple means to you, what Microsoft might mean to you. I think maybe like an updated slide for this, or to talk about the future of this category, is you might start adding Android to this, because I think probably most of us think of Apple as probably more like a phone company now, or a lifestyle personal electronics company than a computer company. But for this example here, we're going to look at them just kind of more as like a laptop versus laptop company, let's say. So differentiation between the brands is really important, which will inform the way that the brand actually talks to consumers. So that's advertising and marketing and whatnot. And then that will also then inform purchase decisions. So when you're thinking about a brand like Apple or Microsoft and you're going out there and purchasing a product, you've already seen different pieces of advertising and marketing that will help you to form that decision. So when you go to the store and actually buy something, you've already kind of made up your mind. So, and then this example I'm going to show next is the classic I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ad. Has everyone seen those ads before? So this is a pretty great example of how they're very different, right?
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
Oh, hey, iPod. Nice.
Yeah, it's just a little something to hold my slow jams.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and it works so seamlessly with iTunes.
You should check out iMovie, iPhoto, iWeb, because they all work like iTunes. iLife. Comes on every Mac.
iLife. Well, I have some very cool apps that are bundled with me.
Well, like, what do you got?
Calculator.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Clock. A clock.
Sounds like hours of fun.
Yeah.
Or at least minutes.
Okay. So just before we move on, last point on this. This is literally brand personalities being used in an advertising campaign. It's just a really nice example of how you can use that storytelling and take it places. So this is an example of a brand and why it's important to keep telling that same brand story. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you this TV spot.
Gets in his car and drives her away, far from all the things that we are. Both are smiling, breathes it in and breathes it out. He says bye, bye, bye to all of us.
Has anyone seen that spot before? I can definitely relate to it more now because I'm waking up in the dark and it's absolutely miserable. Wish it was summer still. So, was that Tropicana? Did you recognize what you perceived Tropicana to be in that spot? A few nods there. The way that we talk about Tropicana, they're actually one of our clients as well, so a little bit biased, but wholesome. So not from concentrate, the idea of growth to glass and sunshine 365 days of the year. So premium, it's highest quality from freshly picked oranges and iconic packaging. And it's traditional, so brighter mornings for brighter days. And the packaging, you guys recognize this as Tropicana packaging? Probably be able to pick it out on the shelf. So the point here is that a couple of years ago, Tropicana did this to the packaging. Which, I mean, does that feel with how we were describing the brands before? Does that fit with the TV spot?
Wholesome and direct from the grove and all those things.
There's a really nice device actually that Derek pointed out, that the straw going straight into the orange is a nice iconic way of getting across that idea of straight from the grove. But it's not here anymore. It's modern and it's fresh. I mean, it's not to say that it's not a great looking carton. I mean, it is.
It's technically more like, it's more modern if you want to look at like the design of it, right? It's a bit cleaner. but the actual glass of orange juice here, it could be from concentrate. Like if you're not really, paying attention to like the natural messaging on here, if you're looking at it really quickly on the shelf, you definitely get natural here. You get straw right in the orange, right? But this is where it started to kind of dilute what the brand stood for. So.
Yeah. And it has an effect. So they did that packaging and sales went down 20%, which it ended up reverting back to the original packaging. But just a nice little example of showing that it really is important to keep telling that same brand story.
Cool. So compelling branded content. Let's talk about what is compelling. So compelling content is making something with value, or something that you'd actually want to watch or use, which is a little bit different than advertising, typically, which is something that, although you might be interested in it, it might not be something that's value to you, or something that you'd actually want to watch or use. So in this case here, we're looking at kind of utility or entertainment, or both. And branded content can either fall into complete utility, complete entertainment, or a little bit of both. There were some examples that we don't have here, but that were on Vine. Does everyone know what Vine is, or you use Vine? And I think it was Rona in the States did a bunch of little Vine videos that showed you how to like fix things around your home. So it was like how to hang a picture like squarely on the wall, or how to fix like a little broken piece of drywall. And there were these little 6 second or 5 second clips, and that would be pretty much purely utility. They did it in a bit of like an entertaining way, but it definitely fell into the camp over here. So I think some of our examples are utility, and some of our examples are more on the entertainment side of things. So has everyone heard of this, the Michelin Guide? This is a guide to go around France, and it's by Michelin. And it was created back in the early 1900s, or 20th century. And so it was created to have people drive all around France and visit various restaurants in France. And at the same time, it was encouraging people to drive and wear out their tires. But what this actually is translated to now is the Michelin's guide. So it's actually the same thing, right? It's like the same kind of approximate size and that kind of thing. But when you hear of like a chef like Gordon Ramsay being like Michelin 3-star, or a restaurant being Michelin 2-star, it's actually, that's coming from this guide, which originally was created back in like the early, like 1929, I think was like the first kind of issue of it. So it's pretty interesting that a car or a tire company would come up with a piece of branded content that was utility based, that eventually we look at that now as like the kind of holy grail of chefs, right? Or like if you get that rating for your restaurant, it's like the ultimate restaurant. So.
There's also a bit of information as well. He had to give up on a promising football career as well, but not because his mum wouldn't buy a football piece.
The country's biggest selling bar laundry soap brings you the guiding light.
This goes on for 5 minutes, so I'll just play it. I'm just joking. I just thought the organ sounded really cool. So the original soap opera, this is from the soap opera example I brought up before, but the original soap operas are really, really compelling pieces of content because they provided entertainment. So housewives were at home. They were, bored according to how people perceived them back then. And actually, women's rights was in a pretty horrible state back in the 30s. So they were at home and they weren't out, doing things. So Dial Corporation, Procter & Gamble, Colgate-Palmolive started to create pieces of branded content that would play during the kind of 9 to 5 schedule. While the husbands were at work and the women were at home, they would listen to these pieces of content. And so it became kind of a household favorite for millions of women all across America. And they used that same platform as a way to sell soap to them as well. So it was kind of this entertainment, but also sales built in. So, and if they had just been like, "Hey, buy our soap," then it's like it wasn't really compelling, right? Versus provide a piece of entertainment that they could also use as a vehicle. So, has everyone heard of this? BMW films The Hire. It's a bit of an older example, but this is a great example of compelling content because it provided entertainment through an amazing cast and storyline. So they hired a bunch of directors like Guy Ritchie and the guy that directed Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, not Ang Lee. Ang Lee? I don't know. Well, they basically hired like 10 Hollywood level directors to produce short films, and they created this thing called BMW Films as a way to kind of actually work as a production company almost. And The Hire was the name of this film series, and it always showed the cars in a really sophisticated way, but the cars were added to the storyline as kind of a core element versus a distraction. So it's not like throughout the the videos they're going somewhere and then when they get to the end of the video it's like, oh, the car is here, like that's kind of lame, versus the car was kind of a vehicle for itself in the branded content.
They were making movies first.
Movies first, car being sold as a car kind of second. And so I'll just play a quick clip from one of the films that's called Star. This clip is from the one that's directed by Guy Ritchie, and it's starring his wife at the time, or maybe who he was having a fling with at the time was Madonna. So
the first thing you notice physically about this lady is her eyes. Bright blue eyes. It's rare to actually see those eyes because they're usually covered up, but when you do, it's worth it. The next thing you notice is her hands. Strong, powerful, yet feminine hands. But the real heart stopper that this woman has in her galaxy of talents is her voice. Her billion-dollar voice. She's a legend in her own lifetime. She's achieved giddy heights few have equaled. She's unrivaled in her world. And she's a complete cunt.
Glenn!
Right here, darling. I'll be right back.
Glenn, get over here.
Hey, Glenn is flying in. Glenn is here to say you are the bomb.
Idiot. You are such a moron. This is not what I pay you for.
All right.
Glenn, her manager for 7 years. No backbone on the man.
Not a problem, sweetheart. We will work it out, okay?
But he gets paid enough not to have one.
Coffee. I want my coffee! It better not be cold.
Piping hot.
I'm so over black.
So that's the part where the car is finally revealed, but it doesn't really feel like a commercial, right? It doesn't feel like a BMW ad. And how many of you were kind of like sucked into the story and you wanted to see more kind of what happened, right? You start to feel like it's an actual movie, and yeah, it happens to have a BMW at this point of the story, and it becomes kind of a central focus of the story, but it's definitely, you know, a movie first before it's a car ad.
And it gets amazing after this. There's this big car.
I wish I could play it, but it's just like, it's 10 minutes long, so. So what was really cool about this is that BMW, the next year, saw their sales numbers go up by 12% after these films were released, and they could directly link it to this. And the movies were viewed over 11 million times in 4 months. And this is when the fastest internet connection was a 56K modem. Because I remember when I was younger, I was downloading these on my computer, and it would take like overnight to download one of these movies. So, and it's funny because after that, when I got into advertising, I realized that's probably why I wanted to get a BMW. But I didn't really realize that at the time, but it was like intrinsic. So.
This next example, I'm going to play it first and talk about it after.
Definitely make this flight, but we're cutting it close. So far the trip is off to a fairly irresponsible start. And so it begins.
So this goes on, and he spends all of Nike's money going around the world. Have you guys seen this before? Pretty cool video. I just think this is a really nice example of kind of two brands coming together. The first being Casey Neistat, I'm not sure how you say his name, but I think as a filmmaker, he had his own brand. And it fits so well with the idea of just do it and make it count coming from Nike. And they came together to make this really cool, just for the sake of its own content, video. It's had a bunch of views, and I think it's just a brilliant example of branded content. This next example, again, I'll play it first.
We bought our tickets at the airport. We planned nothing. Because when nothing's for sure, anything can happen.
So that first video came out, and it was just, it's content for the sake of content. And then a few months later, they came out with this video later that was all about the fuel band. So the fuel band didn't exist when he first did the video. And they tried to kind of retrofit the same idea and make the same kind of content, but I think they went too far, and they made it feel more like an ad. It wasn't content first, it was let's fit a Nike fuel band into this idea. It's not to say that you can't take it down to that product level. Here's an example of how they did just that with the fuel band. So in London, they mapped out the underground stations. You can't really see it, but these are all, I guess you call them subway stations here.
What do you call them? Subway stations. Yeah.
Not very many of them in Toronto.
Tube
stations.
Yeah.
And they mapped out how many points you get if you walked in between those. Now you've confused me. What are they called?
Tube stations.
Those geo points.
Yeah. Subway stations.
Subway stations. Which is, I think, a really nice example of illustrating why the product is useful and providing actual utility. I mean, it would be hard to calculate this on your own.
Yeah. And we also want to show that as an example because although we're mainly talking about films today and kind of more of that medium, it's also important to think about campaigns a bit holistically and think about other kind of forms of branded content that might exist outside of just the filmatic space as well. Because when we're coming up with campaign ideas and we're talking about brands, we're mainly not thinking about the specific execution of like film as a medium or like a print ad or like a billboard. It's kind of everything is like a big 360 campaign. So just kind of think of that as well when even if you're working on a video, just think about how could this idea maybe translate to other mediums. So, great example is Red Bull. So Red Bull, everyone knows Red Bull, obviously the energy drink, and so they created a multi-platform media company called Red Bull Media House with a focus on sports, culture, and lifestyle stuff. And you've probably seen tons of Red Bull content out there on the internet, on YouTube. And on Facebook, which I now don't like anymore because it got me lost tonight. So
it wasn't Facebook's fault. It's not known for its map.
It was my fault for trusting Facebook's data to get me here. So so Red Bull created this company to literally create content for them, right? That would be all about Red Bull. And every time you watch one of those pieces of content, you're definitely leaning in more to the Red Bull brand and like the Red Bull experience. So.
And they're actually separate companies. Red Bull and Red Bull Media House. It exists as its own entity.
Yeah. And everyone knows this example, obviously, that I brought up earlier, which was the example when Felix, I can't pronounce his last name, jumps out of the edge of space to try and break the speed of sound. It's not like he stepped out on the edge and like drank a Red Bull and then like jumped, right? And if Red Bull gives you wings and he took a sip, then he wouldn't have dropped. He would have gone flying. But that's beside the point. It was this event, which is technically like a big, ad or a big piece of, branded content, was carried on 80 TV stations in 50 countries, and it was the webcast was sent through 280 digital partners, and racked up 52 million views of streaming at that time, which was the most watched live stream in history, out of anything, like out of concerts and everything. So pretty crazy that a brand was able to create a piece of content that could bring those kind of eyeballs in. Right?
Did any of you watch it live?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Like we did like the spin and everything. So
there was a little element of it being a bit like a car crash, right? That you were just watching it.
You're afraid.
All these things that were about to go wrong. And you just couldn't stop looking at it.
Yeah. So just kind of a cool thought is that Red Bull is a publishing empire that also happens to sell a beverage. So it's just a different way of looking at it, right? You could say, oh, Red Bull is a beverage company that happens to make content and ads and stuff, but the way that Red Bull has approached their business now with Red Bull Media House and the way that they advertise, I guess you can say, is that it's kind of a publishing empire first, content company first, and then a beverage company second. So
just kind of to wrap it up, make content, get out there, make content, make it great, and if there was one thing to walk away from this thinking, it's leverage the brand. It's an asset. It's not handcuffs. It's the diving board you can dive off of and tell a story one step further. Millions of dollars have been spent building those brands for the right reasons, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That's it. Thanks. I'm going to pass it over to you for a second, and then we're going to do like a Q&A after. So, come on up. Are you good with the microphone?
I think I can be loud enough.
Okay. Yeah. You play the video first?
Yeah, why don't we play a video first, and then I'll let you know about an opportunity that you guys can take advantage of that kind of goes along the lines of what we talked about today.
I think it'll be pretty fun.
Great, so that was all about the Doritos Crash the Super Bowl contest, which is happening right now, and it's the very first time that this contest is open to Canadians, and it's your chance to basically create a 30-second ad for Doritos that could possibly air during this year's Super Bowl. The winners of the contest will also win $1 million and the chance to work on the set of Marvel's The Avengers: Age of Ultron. So since we put on this great talk about creating branded content, it made sense to also give you a great opportunity. So if you want to take advantage of it and learn more about the Doritos Cross the Super Bowl contest, you can visit Doritos.com, and there's everything you need to create your own commercial for Doritos on there. So you'll find project briefing, tips, tricks, and all the tools that you need to make your spot. And if you guys have any questions about that, you can feel free to check out the website or ask any of us a question about it as well. And the contest entries are open until November 24th at midnight. So I'll let you guys take it away with Q&A.
Yeah. So yeah, any questions about branded content or creating branded content or what we do or anything like that? We're here. So and if there's none, that's okay too. Yeah.
So at your job, when you come up with an idea, do you usually outsource like the filming and like the sound, or are you like partly responsible for that as well? Like, do you have to have that sort of expertise to work in your field?
Yeah. So as a creative, my main responsibility is coming up with the campaign idea, or if we're doing like a TV spot, I would be kind of coming up with what that TV spot is, the script, the look and feel. We would reference films and other kind of visual aesthetics to kind of support our vision for that project. When it comes down to actually executing the idea, we would work with a series of production houses and directors. So I wouldn't actually be the one on set directing like the talent to like move around if the spot had talent in it. I would still be on set. I would just be a little bit behind an actual director. and that director would be the one interfacing with the talent and the crew and the guy with the camera, like the DOP, the sound guys on set, that kind of thing. So I would still be there to make sure that the idea that we came up with as an agency and client is being made in the best way possible in terms of our vision. And then when it comes to the post-production, so audio and After Effects or color transferring and all those things, we would also work with other companies as well. So we'd work with like a color transfer house, or we'd work with like a music production company to help come up with an original track, or if they could work out licensing rights to license like an existing track that we wanted to use. So usually we can't afford like the stuff that we want to do. Like we're like, hey, let's use like Rolling Stones, and it's like, oh, it's gonna be $1 million. Okay, never mind. But so does that answer your question? Okay.
Every day there are a lot of videos that are being uploaded on YouTube and a lot of branded content that's going out into the internet. But very few of them go viral, and very few of them actually make people interested in the brand. What do you think the difference is, in your opinion, between a video that goes viral and all the other videos that are just kind of, for instance, the Old Spice ad? It's one of my favorite ads. What do you think it was about ads like that?
I think there are two things in that. First, for Old Spice specifically, that was a really good insight behind that work. That it's not actually men that buy deodorant for the smell, it's women that buy the smell. And that was just a really, really great execution, which ties into the second point, that I think what makes something go viral or get a lot of people to watch it is that it's fundamentally good. And that's why I think branded content is so exciting, that at the end of the day it comes down to it just being really compelling, funny, or useful content.
Yeah, it also has to be culturally relevant, I think is really important. And then I think it has to also be really brave, right? So when you look at that Old Spice ad at the time, I think that the insight around that was aiming maybe the commercial at women, right? So that was, I think, a bit weird for maybe a deodorant company. If you look at what's out there for deodorant companies, it's usually like targeted at guys, right? So it's like, hey, you could look like this macho guy in the shower, and if you like put on this deodorant and go out in the world, then like you're like a macho guy. And the Old Spice thing was targeted at literally at women to say like, I'm the man that your man could smell like. And so that was really brave of them to kind of step outside of what was normally in the category and do something really crazy. And when you're on the internet, and that kind of came out, 5 years ago now or something like that?
I don't know if it was that long ago.
4 years ago, 3 years ago. And it was originally released as a Super Bowl ad. And I think even in the past few years since that's come out, YouTube has gotten even bigger, and the internet has gotten more, has gotten bigger, but also more people are looking at content on the internet. So when you're creating branded content and TV commercials and stuff for the internet, you're actually competing with the whole rest of the internet. So you're not just competing with other ads. So although the Old Spice ad was very different for the Super Bowl, it was kind of competing within that Super Bowl space to say, we want our ad to stand out within this small space. They put it online after, and it still stood out against a lot of other content on the internet. So, yeah. Cool.
What are you guys, what are advertising agencies sort of looking for from new graduates? If they're looking for a job.
Yeah. Would you be looking to get into creative or like Matt?
You know what? I just realized we did a really bad job of introducing ourselves.
Yeah, okay.
So let's go back to that.
Okay.
So rewind.
So I'm Derek.
46 minutes ago.
And so I'm an art director at BBDO. And so I'm like a creative, and I come up with, like the ideas behind our brand's campaigns. And that might go all the way from, a campaign I was looking at today was Johnny Walker, Keep Walking. And that was a really cool campaign that's been going on for a while, but part of my role might be coming up with what is that tagline for the entire platform of Johnny Walker, and then also going all the way down to what does that spot look like as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I work really closely with Matt, and Matt does something similar but a little bit to the right of what I do.
Which is, drumroll, no.
Yeah.
I'm a strategist, an account planner, they call it. And my job is to come up with like that insight for Old Spice. Let's go after a different target and let's approach them with this type of message. So I'm kind of the foundation to what Derek built on top of. So coming up with a strategy.
Yeah, it's good because if I'm working closely with Matt, or you're a creative working really closely with a planner or a strategist, they can come up with these really interesting insights for you and say, hey, there's actually an interesting insight that women really influence the man to purchase his deodorant. So why are we creating an ad for a man? We should really be creating it for a woman. That might be really interesting. And that might have provided a bit of the runway for that team, that art director and that copywriter to come up with that Old Spice ad.
So to answer your actual question in the longest way possible, I think it's what are advertising agencies looking for? Same thing as content, good people, and proving it, right? Like I think it's all about proving it, and I don't know. It's a tough question.
I would say that you need to definitely understand brands and understand what the tone of the brand is. So I do see a bunch of portfolios every week, just people emailing me or coming in and that kind of thing. And sometimes they have a really wacky idea for Nike or something, but it doesn't really make sense for Nike. And then I can kind of look at that and say, well, you don't really understand that brand, and this would never work in the market because it doesn't really leverage what the brand's all about. And if Nike's about just doing it or finding your greatness, and it's something totally different, then if we were to make that ad and put it out there, people wouldn't really respond to it in a way that would make sense for them for what Nike is. So I think it's having an understanding of brands and being kind of critical about your own work, being within those kind of guardrails, and then being really innovative. So coming up with ideas that have never been done before, right? Like we're always looking at ways to come up with work that people have never seen before, and that's extremely challenging. And I don't have a guaranteed way of how to come up with that kind of work, but
I guess it's a slightly compliment that, and I guess to go the opposite way as well. It's not just about what you're capable of now. It's about what your brain is and the way that you think. Mm-hmm. So any way that you can show that you're thinking about things is a great way to do it. So the reasons why you came up with a concept.
Yeah, we're always you should never hire anyone based on what they've done. You should always hire someone on what they can do. So we do need to look at what you've done in terms of like a portfolio. So whether it's some spec work you've done, or if you're in a program like a Humber program or like a Ryerson or like a whatever, it's important for us to look at kind of what you've done, how your brain works, and then what you can bring to the table moving forward. So
there's also a good paragraph in an article, and you'd have to Google it, but the stereotypes of millennials. And someone said to me a little while ago that if you read that and just do the opposite of that, you're going to go a long way. So do that.
Yeah. So does that answer your question in a crazy long way? Okay. Yeah.
When you guys are trying to come up with a big idea or a big concept, and you're looking for that insight, what are some tips on trying to find it? I know you got to research and go out there and ask people, but what you see as the best approach for trying to find these insights?
Living whatever it is that you're thinking about. So if I'm working on chips, for example, I'm incredibly creepy when I go grocery shopping, and I've got really good at pretending to shop for something, and I'll watch what other people when they're making a purchase decision, and you think about who it is and why they
see them going like this with like two brands and like doing this. And
and you even start to acknowledge where things are in a store. So I've started to notice that Pop seems to always be in the aisle with toilet paper. I'm guessing because one of them you absolutely need and the other one is a complete impulse purchase. So if you can trick in that. So you see, it's just keeping your eyes open, reading stuff online.
It wouldn't make sense to put like high brand cereal with the toilet paper because it's too linked. It's too like it would make too much sense. So
thanks for that.
Yeah. But yeah, so Matt's that was my
really
bad joke attempt there. But so Matt's role is typically looking at more like mining for those insights. When I'm creating an ad from a creative standpoint, I'm definitely thinking like my target consumer. So if I'm making an ad if my target is like a mom, I don't really know how to be a mom very well, but I will try my best to I'll read mommy blogs and I'll go out there and I'll
You'd probably be a better mom than most other guys.
maybe, because I know more about
because you've lived a life
in
your head.
Yeah, so it's getting into kind of the headspace. And then also getting away from the computer. Really getting away from the computer. That's such a... It's such a idea and insight killer, I find. It's good to do your research and stuff on it, really quick, go on the internet and Google and stuff, but when you're actually thinking, it's really important to get away from the computer, go for a walk, watch how people behave. Everyone's doing this now, so it's go back on the computer, okay. Yeah. But so.
And I guess the other thing is, don't always expect to find a huge insight. Not everything is going to be groundbreaking.
So sometimes it's a really small insight.
Yeah.
And then if you can build something big on top of that, then that's good. So, answer your question?
Recent years I've seen, for a new example of a company that seems sort of consciously rebranding itself. Sort of a symbol of American industry, it's forward thinking, progressive. Is that something that they would approach an ad agency with and be we want a new look, or is that something that would be something?
So, for Ford, I think that they have changed entirely as a company. I mean, since 2008, they had to. So I think that would have started as a business decision that, geez, we've got to reinvent ourselves because otherwise we're going to end up dead. But they would make some business decisions and integrate that with the agencies. So I imagine anyway that this is what we're going to be changing about the products that we make. I think they started focusing a lot more on quality and a bunch of these other business decisions. And then they come to an advertising agency and we talk about how do you communicate that and what does that mean to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. And they might, depending on their relationship with their agency, they also might come a bit earlier in the process and say, listen, we've made this decision that we need to change. We don't know exactly how we're going to change yet, but sometimes brands will come to advertising agencies with their brands in their hands a little bit and kind of say, why don't you play with this brand a bit and let's figure out, as client and brand and agency, how we can help change Ford for the better.
So. And that's actually part of my job as well, is that as a brand you have kind of building blocks that are features that exist. So Ford would come and say, we're focusing on quality, we want to be we're spending money to be a phoenix from the ashes or something. Mm-hmm. And part of my job is spinning that to why should any normal American care about that?
Yeah, and it's interesting to one more mini ramble, but Ford might look at itself and go, what are we anymore? Are we a car company or are we a transportation company? And if they're a transportation company, they might take a step back and go, okay, what else can we do in the transportation realm that might not be a car? And then executives at Ford might say, that's crazy, we make cars, what are you talking about? And Kodak, everyone remembers Kodak, obviously, and now Kodak is gone. But Kodak was focused on producing film. It wasn't focused on capturing Kodak moments or capturing memories. And that's where, Instagram is a really great example of a really successful company that has focused on kind of the act of capturing memories, where kind of Kodak was too focused on selling film. So again, if Ford was focused on just selling cars and we started moving towards a carless society, they would be kind of out of luck unless they took that step back, looked at their core brand values, and then kind of built from there. So does that answer your question? All right.
Just a question on, you're obviously working on multiple brands at any given moment. How do you ensure uniqueness across each of the brands that you work with, as opposed to just a generic, okay, this is my work and it all has that same across the board each of the brands?
Yeah. I think as a creative, inherently each brand is already unique. So I know that when I work on Doritos, it's not the same as Lay's. Lay's is a potato chip. Doritos is corn-based. I know that Doritos is more about being bold and fun, and Lay's is maybe a bit more fun and about being kind of happy and that kind of thing. So brands definitely are very different already and unique already. So when I start brainstorming within the Lay's space, I'm not going to do something that would be like a crazy bold thing maybe for Doritos. If I was working in the Doritos space, I'm going to do something that's going to stand out and make more sense for that brand. That if I was to show that ad to a mom who was looking at buying Lay's, she might go, "Oh, that's crazy. That's for teenagers." And it's like, well, it is for teenagers because that's kind of that angle. So definitely working within the already unique space of that brand, And then in terms of the ideas being really fresh, it's just constantly pushing myself personally to keep looking at all kinds of different things out there. I'm always looking at like Wired magazine or Fast Company. I'm obsessed with like robots recently, which has nothing to do with advertising, but I just like to look at crazy things to kind of like spark my thoughts in different ways. And I don't ever draw direct comparisons from what I'm inspired by. It's just kind of like I'll be in a brainstorm and something will happen and it's like, okay, maybe I can relate that to that crazy robot I saw earlier, but it's not that the idea has a robot in it. It's just...
You guys will see a campaign soon.
Yeah, you're going to see a robot campaign soon, yeah.
You're not going to do it.
Yeah. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, and how does the strategist go about it?
I mean, for me, a big part of my job is making sure that which brands are separate, right? So defining what the brand is. Fundamentally, I have to say, who are we going to be selling this to and why are we going to be selling it to them, which keeps you in a different space. So it's probably much easier for me because it's so much about what I'm doing than it is for Derek.
I think a bad example would be like that margarine that I showed. That was like the 2 tubs. So the strategist there did a pretty horrible job, and so did the creative team because the creative team probably was lazy and just said, "Oh, we'll just copy like kind of look and feel of this other one."
Unless that was the strategy.
So maybe that was actually smart to try to confuse the consumer at the aisle, and they grab the other one. But yeah, that's a bit of a gamble. So. Cool. Any more questions? Cool. Okay, thanks for coming out. And if you want to talk after, I think we'll be around for like a little bit. And I think is there leftover pizza? Okay, good. All right, thanks.